I'm going to talk to you about generative art, he, him pronouns. So one thing I want to keep this question in mind during this presentation is like, what makes a software developer a software developer? You know, is it having blue tint in your glasses, or is it like something more? Is there something more behind that? And what is art? You know, is it this like undefined thing that, or is it just beauty? Is it inspiration? Is it just like imagination? And who is the artist behind that? So what is generative art? Generative art is art created with the assistance of a computer, and it uses randomness as part of its creation process. So it's like writing algorithms that go through steps that one affects the other, and it creates like a plot on the screen, or like a stroke or a line or anything really. So generative art takes advantage of what like computing has to offer to produce like these amazing art pieces that revolve around like the same principles that artists have always strived for throughout history. Here's an example from Vera Molnar, Interruptions from 1968. She was an early pioneer of this. And since computers back then didn't really have like monitors to a sense, these were printed on very large printers. This is a photo of her, and another piece that she did in 1974. Another artist, Manolo Gamboa, Argentinian visual artist, creative coder. You can tell that through his pieces, you can really use as like this programming as like this expressive language. Some other examples here. So some myths about generative art is that like the code is what's creating the art. And it really doesn't have this connection that the artist would normally have with like a canvas or a paintbrush. But really that's just, these are just common myths. Like artists have, like they don't have a control over the generating designs, the computer's making the art, but really there's this relationship between a computer and the artist. So like, why am I talking about generative art? What is the big deal about this? For me, I think generative art is really a good example for the future of the tech community. It challenges the status quo. It challenges that art should be something that is like in a museum, hanging on a wall. Whereas here we can see Justin Gitlin, also known as Cashflow, who's also a Denver artist, projects creative coding on the clock tower downtown. As you can see, this is super cool. And it's using programming to create this visual piece that people can immediately relate to and connect with. And that transitions to my next point. Generative art gives space for empathy. It allows you to like immediately look at a piece and try to feel what that other artist or programmer was feeling at that moment, kind of allowing you to create space for future projects. You know, like how will this make someone feel if I were to do it this way? If I were to just make a long for loop that has like no optimization, will this be good for the team or the people that I'm working with? The 2016 US Census Bureau said that 77% of households had a laptop or desktop in their home. So the accessibility for this is very high. All you really need is a laptop. I know there's a certain point of privilege there is to owning a laptop, a computer, but the programs that these run on are very, very lightweight. So it could really introduce a number of people to programming or coding and get interested in it right off the bat, because it kind of gives you like this visual piece on the screen to allow you to like, oh, is there anything else I can learn, or is there anything else I can explore? So processing is one of the programs that is really lightweight, and a lot of creative coders, generative artists use. It is pretty much just takes in code on the side of the screen, and it'll show you a visual representation of that code. And that's like a combination of like sine waves and all types of physics that are involved. It's really actually really cool. I'm definitely a part of this, and I'm sure a lot of you are kind of getting this feeling, this idea of imposter syndrome, this idea that like, I don't belong, I shouldn't be here. You know, a lot of people at Turing have this untraditional background. For me, I worked in retail for years, and I just kind of got into coding just mistakenly, I admit, but I've really enjoyed it this entire process. And I think what generative art can do for people as they explore it can be a process where you don't have to compare yourself to anybody. there's just this nice, fun exploration aspect of it where you can dive deep and you don't have to create like an e-commerce website and then realize it's not Amazon or it's like this giant, amazing website. You can create some images on a screen and really feel proud of that because you were just typing away, creating code and creating like a visual image that kind of gave you some type of a positive feeling. And I think there's something to be said about this idea of exploration. With programming, there's this idea that, you know, read the documentation, Google this, Google that. But I think what is nice about creative coding is that you can just let your mind free. There's so many resources out there where you can go on YouTube. A lot of this is open source, you know, copy down the repo and just really explore and see where that takes you and see what kind of ideas and different things can come from that. So I'll leave you with this quote here. This may sound paradoxical, but the machine, which is thought to be cold and inhuman, can help to realize what is most subjective, unattainable, and profound in a human being. And that's from Vera Molnar, the initial artist I showed to you. So thank you, everyone. Sources.
Great, thanks, Danny. This is great. I'll go ahead and open it up. If anyone would like to add anything or has any questions, go ahead and raise your hand. Taylor?
Yeah, hi. Danny, I've got a question for you. Do you, have you started picking this up as a hobby? Have you been making some generative art yourself?
Yeah, actually, I was gonna try to put this in my slide. Wasn't in a format that Google appreciated, but this isn't generative, but this was like in the middle of Mod 4. I was just kind of exploring with this, and it's just like taking an image and creating these small little bubbles to create that iconic Cameron photo in the pink fur. So if there's any hip hop heads out there, this is Cameron.
Super cool. Thank you.
Thanks, Taylor. How about George?
Yeah, I really liked this. This is so cool. I'm like so jazzed about this. How did you hear about this? And like, you talked about repos and like exploring that, but like, who like lit that fire for you?
Ooh, that is a great question. I think it's kind of like I saw, I think, a lightning talk when I was in Mod 1 or Mod 2 and kind of got curious about it. Cashflow, Justin Gitlin is like a pretty big name in the community. Also has, I think he did a talk at Turing, the mod before I even started. So bummed I missed that. But I think I came across a video on YouTube and realized someone had created that with code. And I was like, I'm learning how to code. I could do that. And then it just dug a little deeper.
Awesome. Thank you. I do a lot of this just on pen and paper. And so like I'm in the back-end program as well. So to know that this is something that can go together is amazing.
Totally. Great. That's great. Thank you.
Curtis?
I'm also in backend, and I was just wondering if like there are any Ruby tools that you can use to do stuff like this.
I haven't come across any Ruby tools, but I would really encourage you to download processing, really super lightweight, and it they don't have it, you can't write it in Ruby, but they have it for Java and maybe JavaScript. So it can maybe get you interested in some other languages that kind of pop up in Mod 4. And there's like so many resources out there to just like copy something and then like expand from there.
Cool, thank you.
Great, we'll go ahead and wrap it up there. Thanks, Danny.
Thank you.
And then next we have Michael and Madeline. This is our only pair, I think. Yes.
Hello.
What's up, y'all?
I'm assuming we can see the screen. Awesome. All right. So first of all, I just want to say congratulations to like almost making it through your first mod at Turing. So that's pretty big. I bet it's probably been pretty exhausting, and congratulations, you made it. And it gets harder, so buckle up and get ready for that. And don't sleep on the intermission work. But anyways, free will in an age of technology. So, hey Siri, what is free will? Well, according to the robot I just consulted, free will is the ability to choose between different. Whoops, sorry, Siri just popped in when I said that. But according to her, I'm assured that free will is the power of acting without the constraint or necessity of fate. In other words, it's the ability to act at one's own discretion. Free will is one of the oldest philosophical debates that there is. Over the years, humans have always wondered exactly how much control we have over our lives. It has always been an interesting question in my mind as technology progresses every year and becomes even more interesting. It becomes even more of an interesting concept to me. Stephen Hawking once said, "The reason we say that humans have free will is because we can't predict what they will do." The reason this quote hits home for me is that we live in an age where algorithms rule. If we ever had free will in the first place, is it possible that it's being hijacked from us? You sit down to watch a movie, the algorithm has provided you with a selection of films to choose from. You log on to Amazon, you get a bunch of results that the algorithm thinks are right for you. It might be in a green package and you might want to buy it. You go on a date, you fall in love, you get a divorce, but you still remain close with your ex-lover, all thanks to the algorithm that introduced you in the first place on the dating application. There are countless examples of the decision-making power that we as humans are offloading to the algorithms. From what I can tell, this will only continue, especially as we head towards a future where people like Elon Musk are trying to get you to implant a microchip into your brain. So, from its earliest beginnings, the problem of free will has always been intimately connected with the question of moral responsibility. I think it's important for us as budding developers to think about what impact and power we might have over the algorithms and indirectly affecting someone else, as well as how we ourselves are being impacted. So step one is don't upload unverified software into your brain. Step two will be cybersecurity is going to become more and more important. Consider all the ways you are securing yourself while browsing the internet. Also, cybersecurity is a good slant if you're trying to make a career choice, and it will help you along the way as you help others. And maybe most importantly, it's vital that we start electing officials to the office that are forward-thinking on issues of technology. We need someone to represent us in government on the issues of data rights, privacy rights, and just creating general guardrails for technology against things like advanced AI. And for some more information on all the ways that we're being monitored, I'm going to pass it off to Mad Dog 2020, and she's going to tell you about targeted ads.
Thank you, Michael. That was wonderful and illuminating. So guys, targeted ads, who are they? Where do they come from? Let me set the scene for you. Imagine this. You want those sweet, sweet new Nikes that Chad just got. He walks in the classroom, like, oh my God, those are so nice. Quick, Google it on your phone, pull up all these Nikes, you add them to cart, you're like, gonna buy them later when I have a little bit more money. It's gonna be great. Next slide. You went too fast. One back. There we go. So, it's a couple days later, you still haven't gotten paid, you haven't bought your Nikes yet, but you open up your computer to go, check Facebook, and on the side, there are those Nikes that you want right there. And then you go and check Instagram, and you're scrolling, and you get a Nike ad. And then, you go on Pinterest, all of your socials, and they all have these Nikes that just want you to buy them. They really want you to buy them. So now, you get paid, you buy your Nikes, you see that like all your favorite celebrities wore them once upon a time, a couple years ago. There's some other people that are just starting to get them. It's crazy. Your best friend just got the same Nikes because they got the same ads for them on Amazon. Yeah, but you keep seeing the ads after you get them. And so they're really just being advertised to everybody at this point, Here's what's actually happened. So your browsing information is not private and never has been. Yeah, thanks, Danny. What happens when you go on the internet is the internet essentially has created a digital footprint for you. So all of your information on like where you shop, who you hang out with, what type of products you buy, maybe they're those sweet, sweet green products, has all been added to this sort of digital persona that is you. And that information has been sent off to these large companies that then can kind of manufacture that information into personalized ads that are specifically tailored to what they think you want to buy. And the more times you're exposed to something, the more likely you are to buy it. If you see it once 2 years ago, and then again a year later, and then concentrated in a period of weeks, it starts to infiltrate your brain as something that like that you want to buy. You had this idea. It wasn't the ads, it was you. You get multiple exposures to it. And so that's kind of how you end up buying those sweet Nikes. So what can you do? This might sound a little bit scary. Sometimes it's nice because you get things tailored to you when you're in the market for them, but other times it's kind of annoying. So there are several steps that you can take to kind of minimize the impact that these targeted ads have on your life. You can install an ad blocker. There's a great one that I use. It's an ad block Chrome extension that just blocks any sort of ads from popping up. You can use specific browsers designed for your privacy. There's one called Brave that's great. You can use incognito mode, incognito windows, incognito tabs. And then lastly, you can give up on the 21st century, sell your worldly possessions and become a hermit. And that's targeted ads and how they impact your free will in this world, whether or not we even had it to start with.
Great. We done? Yes. Cool. We'll go ahead. Let's open it up for questions. Thanks, Michael and Madeline. Questions, comments? Kate?
As somebody who used to use all of this information to be a marketer, sorry, not really sorry, but yeah. Also, a real quick way to take care of the Nike ads following you around is go into your browser and delete all your cookies. They'll stop following you around, promise.
Thanks, Kate. Robert?
I think I just wanted to say, you know, this is all the more evidence for why it's important, especially as we go into the political system, to kind of deliberately try to get out of our echo box, because we have all sorts of, it's been crazy even on my own Facebook, some of the various ads I've been getting, which has been strange to say the least, but of course, here we are in the season. And I think that's where, I know for me, growing up and going through school, one of the things one of my political science professors suggested was to make sure that you go quadruple check your information. So like, don't just go, say if you do go to Fox News or whatever, then go to 2 other news sites or whatever. So that way you can get not only a varied diet of it, but you can also compare the headlines and those sorts of things. And so I think even say shopping around for shoes or whatever, you know, you can get out of the echo of just Nike and search for others, so that you can kind of, you have to go out of your way to see more variety, but we can still choose to do so.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, especially about just the diversity of the things you look at. I feel like will confuse a lot of like things that are tracking. You're like, I'll start getting ads for crazy shit I would never be interested in just because I like to look at this perspective of this issue, this perspective of this issue, and that perspective. And I think that's a good point, just being more diverse in what you're looking at yourself.
Yeah, great point, Robert. John?
Please excuse my tinfoil hat, everyone, but so funny story. I'm Asian. I know you guys can't see my face, but I am. And ever since I switched my phone over to the iPhone where it unlocks your face, I've all of a sudden started getting ads that I never got before in Chinese. And I thought, huh, that's weird. Never got these before, but now all my ads seem to be in Chinese, which I'm not, by the way. So whoever's doing that is racist, if someone is doing that. But it might just be, coincidence, but I just thought it's something funny.
It's either
Yeah,
someone or
actually,
something.
one of our cohort mates from Mod 4, his name's Antonio, and all the ads he gets thinks he's Mexican, and he's not. So like all in Spanish, and he's like, I'm just not Mexican.
John, are you telling us that you're not several blades of grass?
Only on the weekdays.
I love that hope I can just see you and now I can see me in his background. All right, Jake.
Yeah, I have a question that I've kind of noticed. I'm wondering if it kind of came up for you during your research for this. I've been like having conversations with people on stuff that I've never Googled before, but I'll pull up Facebook and then it's like listening to my conversations and I'll have an ad about that exact thing. Do you see that at all?
Definitely see it constantly. Like, I'm not screen sharing, but like on the first slide that I had is like a targeted ad for me while I was doing research on this. That's like, is AI fueling your decision making? I'm like, well, that's relevant to our topics here. And honestly, I don't know like the technical side of how they're getting conversations that you're having, even when you're not even typing something into a computer. I'm assuming they're just coming through the speakers, but fuck, I don't know, man.
Yeah, so what happens is like, let's say you have Instagram installed and you want to like post a video. You have to give Instagram permission to your camera and your microphone. And if you give an app permission to use your camera and microphone, they can use that data.
Terrifying.
Yeah, that's wild. All right, let's go Kate and then Greg, and then we'll wrap it up for Michael and Madeline. Go ahead, Kate.
Really quickly, these devices that we have across our homes from Amazon, from Google, that we speak to and Siri answers and all that kind of shit. This is why. It is, if it is on, it is activated. They in their terms of service, you were giving them permission to listen. So there you go.
Greg?
Yeah, I was wondering where like VPNs fit into all this and how that affects your privacy. I don't know if you can speak to what those do exactly.
I can speak to VPNs and like how this would affect. So a VPN, for those of you that don't know, is kind of like your IP address essentially of like your location of where you're accessing the internet from. And you can download certain applications that allow you to move your VPN to different places. And I don't know exactly how it affects that digital footprint, but I know that like an example of this is, let's say that you typically log into your Netflix when you're at home on your laptop, and then you use a VPN and log in from Florida. Like you place your VPN in Florida, you will get an email that says, hey, something suspicious just happened. Someone tried to log into your account from Florida. So I think it's like it can see that where you typically log in is here, and if you move your VPN to over here, it doesn't match that digital profile.
Great. All right. Thank you all. We'll go ahead and wrap it up there. And then next, oh, I just lost it. There we go. Next, we have Alex.
Okay. All right. So while on the subject of free will, let's talk about voting. My name's Alex Eichmann, he, him pronouns. I'm part of the front end 2003 cohort. And today I'm going to be talking about expanding democracy through application development. So kind of the big question that I want to address with this is, should there be an application that allows a user to cast a vote in an election? So why is this relevant now? if you have been on any form of the media, you probably know that this year is an election year, and voting is very important. At the moment, there's two primary ways that you could cast a vote, either through a mail-in version, which works really well here in Colorado, so we're very fortunate to have that, or physically going to a voter location. This year is a little different. 2020 has been a year, but yeah, it's really different for a variety of reasons. And being able to cast a vote and effectively make substantive change based on that is very important. So if you're not registered, do it, cast a vote. No matter what party you're going for, just do it. So some of the problems that we're currently having at the moment are the voting machines themselves are very old. They don't always get the consistent updates that are needed. Ballots can be confusing as well too. Typically, or actually this picture here on the left will take you to a time machine to the year 2000. A much simpler time, but this was the infamous butterfly ballot, which was in Florida of all places. Yeah, basically voters were very confused as far as who they're casting a vote for. Basically that yellow line down the center, you would punch that, and it was very just like a not very intuitive process. Also, there's a lot of deliberate efforts to disenfranchise voters. Being able to vote is increasingly hard more and more every year. So if any of you guys have been unfortunate enough to go onto government websites for whatever reason, they're not really built with a user experience in mind. So yeah. So what would be the benefits of having an application in order to cast a vote? It would, us on the front end, we have really been hammered into the idea of user experience and having an overall easy application flow for users to interact with it. So that would be one of the major benefits of kind of getting away from that butterfly ballot example that we had earlier. Instantaneous vote counts would be great. Just, you get that, you cast a vote, you have a receipt for it, that your voice is heard. So yeah, that would be one of the major benefits to do that as well. Also, if it's easy, it would enable more people to do so. A lot of people, their excuse for not voting is, hey, I don't have the time. I can't really fit that into my schedule. So this would allow the users to have a lot more flexibility in terms of when they do want to submit that vote. Yeah, which is one of the major benefits of having a mail-in ballot system at the moment. What are the risks for this? When I was in Mod 1 and we were learning about testing, we had one of the first examples that we had was a company was hired to roll out an application for the Iowa caucus, and it pretty much failed. It was rushed, it rolled out way too quick. So yeah, so one bug can completely undermine the whole process of everything and undo what is needed. Users have the tendency to interact with applications in which the user or the developers did not intend. Anytime I look at the picture on the left, I like cringe a little bit, but you're in software development now, so this is the normal. It would also have to be one of the most robust and secure applications, period. There's a lot of incentive for foreign states to, want to hack this. So yeah, it would have to be very secure on all spectrums. Also, another drawback would be it'd be very hard to verify a user. There would have to be either facial recognition, fingerprint scanning. So it's not something that you could just roll out in a year. This would have to have a lot of checks involved with it. Then also COVID. We're dealing with that right now, and it's making voting substantially harder. Because of this, not too many people want to stand in line. Mass gatherings are really you know, you watch a video of like a sporting event and where everybody's like gathered together, and it seems like such a different world. So our democracy and the process behind that has to reflect that as well. Also interacting with voting machines, touching something, you know, is something that there's just an overall hygiene thing involved with this now. More people want to work from home, and this is kind of the new normal. Then also mail-in voting. This is kind of what I like to liken it to is, you know, when was the last time you sent an email compared to, you know, when was the last time you sent a letter? Having kind of that digitized effect is the new normal. So. And then just kind of some general discussion questions for everybody would be, would you feel comfortable working with an application to cast a vote? Also, do there need to be additional steps necessary to verify a vote that we wouldn't take if, you know, you went to a voting location or submitted it via the mail-in process? Also, is this inevitable? Is this going to happen eventually, given, you know, maybe this won't be the first quarantine, and also, you know, just with overall technological advances. So, and that is it.
Great. You want to, Alex, go ahead and leave those discussion questions up. And
Sure.
then go ahead and raise your hand if you'd like to add anything or ask any questions. Michael.
Yo, so I don't know anything about the blockchain, but during this, like the first thing that popped into my head was, could that be a use case for helping secure votes, since the blockchain, that's like, I know it's used for similar things.
It could be. My knowledge of, I've tried to understand the blockchain so many times and I still like, yeah, it could. I wouldn't be able to give a good answer as far as, you know, overall security, but I do understand that, you know, that's why a lot of those cryptocurrencies are very secured, is because of that blockchain model. So.
Cool, thanks.
Anyone else? Joshua?
I guess to answer your question, Alex, for the first one, I wouldn't feel comfortable with voting through an application right now. But I also think that given technological advances, that it is inevitable. And I'm sure that I would feel more comfortable in the future once, I mean, once we have some sort of example case where it was successful. But I guess with the caucuses as like our main example so far, it was like a disaster. So. Not
sure.
yet, but soon, hopefully someday.
Yeah, I think it would just be an incredibly long development process, and they might be doing it right now, but overall, like security and authentication would be, you know, kind of the biggest concerns.
George?
Yeah, that was kind of I was going to ask, like, what's happening right now? Like, what is the development? Do you know of the development? Have you heard in your research of, like, you know, this is politics, so is one side more like leaning towards this as a good idea? Like, what have you come across in your research?
I haven't found too many like specific examples of places or like, you know, different countries or states or anything trying to develop something like this. Kind of what I was basing it off of was there's other applications that we use, you know, for other kind of social things, interactions that we have with the government. Like you file your taxes through TurboTax, you could register to vote online. So I think that's mainly what the changes are being happening right now, just a lot safer, I guess, changes, and then you know maybe towards incrementing towards like an application that would live on your phone. But I haven't found too many examples of that.
Great. Well, thanks, Alex.
Yeah.
Very relevant. Appreciate that. All right. And then our last presenter for Gear Up today is Taylor. So Taylor, if you want to go ahead and take over the screen and get started whenever you're ready.
Let's do it. Oops, that's not the right slide. There we go. All right. Hi, everyone. My name's Taylor. I'm a 2003 back-end student about to finish up. And today we're going to be talking about bias in algorithms. So we'll just start with a little bit of background. Algorithms are pervasive in our society. They have a wide net of influence over our lives that are both direct and indirect. They can be easy to see, but they can also be tough to see. And like Madeline and Michael pointed out, every social media site you go to is using algorithms to recommend products to you. Also, algorithms can be opaque. Unless they're open sourced, they're highly valued proprietary information. And so it's hard to be able to see what they're actually doing. And it's easy for there to be oversight. Small mistakes in the code can have these cascading effects that have much more dangerous outcomes than would be initially expected. And then finally, who are going to be the watchdogs to ensure that these algorithms are functioning as people say they are? And who's going to vet these so-called black box algorithms? And we'll just walk through a couple of examples. So the first one I'm going to start with is the Apple Card and how there was anecdotal evidence of gender bias. And this was initiated as a partnership between Goldman Sachs and Apple, with Goldman Sachs owning the algorithm to approve credit limit increases or disapprove people for cards. And this became a high-profile incident when David Hinson, on the right here, you'll learn about his creation, Ruby on Rails. He filed a complaint about how he was given a drastically higher credit limit than his wife, even though they have joint finances. And what was even more interesting to me is Steve Wozniak reported a similar incident where him and his wife have had joint finances for quite a while, but he was still given a higher credit limit, and they both had issues reaching out to the company to get this corrected. So in November of 2019, the New York Department of Financial Services launched an investigation to this matter, and they have not yet published their results. And my kind of question with this example is, as developers, are we responsible for vetting the algorithms we use, even if we didn't create it? And what do we do if we don't have access to the source code? My next example is going to be the COMPAS recidivism algorithm. Recidivism is the tendency of a convicted criminal to reoffend. And this is a software that was created by Northpoint, and it was investigated by ProPublica. So when a defendant's booked in jail, they'll fill out this COMPAS questionnaire, and then that's going to feed into the algorithm and play a part in the sentencing process. And they found their algorithm to be accurate across the board about 60% of the time. But when you look at data from a 2-year follow-up period, bias starts to be highlighted. And this comes through in Black defendants who did not reoffend within a 2-year period. They're almost twice as likely to be misclassified as a high risk to reoffend as compared to the white counterparts. And the flip side of that was white defendants who did reoffend within the next 2 years were mistakenly labeled as low risk almost twice as often as Black reoffenders. And my question with this one is, this is a proprietary algorithm. We don't have access to the source code, but it can play a large part in sentencing in our criminal justice system. So should similar algorithms such as this be made public so we can all view them? Or should they at least be made available to watchdog groups to investigate them? And then finally, I'm going to briefly touch on facial recognition. So facial recognition is widely used by our policing departments at all levels of our government. The FBI, since 2011, has launched almost 400,000 searches of state driver's license records and other databases. And I think this is very dangerous because there is a higher rate of false positives for people of non-white demographics on one-to-one matching. And the reason I believe this to be so dangerous is that can feed into confirmation bias, whereas now the detectives can try to fit the evidence to make the crime fit this person that the algorithm spit out to them, even though they might be perfectly innocent. And my question with these facial recognition algorithms is, where does bias start to enter into the algorithm? Is it in how the algorithm's designed, how it's architected by the developers, or can it be, does bias enter in the data that we use to train these machine learning algorithms? And then I have a whole bunch of reflection questions if y'all want to have a discussion. Cool. That's it.
Great. Thanks, Taylor. Super, super interesting. I'll go ahead and let's let people read through some of these questions. And then if anyone has any follow-up questions or comments on these questions, go ahead and raise your hand.
I keep getting stuck on that 60%. Just thinking about, like, I've had worse grades in high school calculus, and you know, that wasn't accepted, and that doesn't put somebody in jail for years.
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting. I had no idea that tools like that were used in the sentencing process.
Yeah, do you know where the COMPAS algorithm is being used? Is it?
Yeah, I know. I don't know widespread how far it's used, but the investigation that ProPublica launched was in Florida because, like I said, that the algorithm's proprietary, so you don't have access to it. But apparently, Florida has really nice, like public record laws. So ProPublica was able to get access to all of the data that was fed into the algorithm and then came out of it. And so then that's how they launched it. So as far as I know, in Florida, I'm sure it's in other states as well.
Robert?
One of the things I might say about stats, I oddly enough have a master's degree in public policy, and there's an entire world that's involved with like survey design and the way stats are done. And it's one of the biggest problems with it is that stats are also determined by humans and the choices that we make about how we define things. There was even, I think, Harvard University, they are in the ACT or the SAT, they added a new metric to try to equalize things for if somebody comes from an underrepresented community to try to make them more likely to get into certain universities. And when other people went in to look at this particular stat and the way they were doing it, one of the things that they discovered is actually that even the way that we report crimes and the way it works leads to biases in the statistics that way. So for instance, if I live in a community where there is a lot of white collar crime, or if there's even if there are a lot of drugs or something, but it's never reported, then that never gets into the drug stats, that never makes it into the metadata that actually ends up determining this. And so that's where I think like statistics in and of itself is such a complex world and environment, and that anybody would do well to spend as much time as you can learning about them and the way that they work, because it is important, I think, to be able to challenge those sorts of stats whenever you do see them, and to actually look at the data. You can actually go into the code, as it were, with them. You can look at the journal articles, you can look at various things and make your own decisions about them. But so that's also a possibility, is to actually go look at the data yourself, regardless of what it is.
That's great. Thanks, Robert. And then let's go ahead and we'll wrap it up with Will. That's the last hand I see raised. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I haven't really thought this through very well, but it's just a thought experiment, I guess. I've been reading your last question. I think this is a really interesting presentation. And I just, in my head, I'm like, I wonder, is it even possible to build an unbiased algorithm? Or is it the nature of algorithms to be biased? And it's just, maybe because they're making recommendations off of limited information, that are there just biases that are more important, most importantly, don't have them fall on those lines, and other biases that are just the nature of it, that, you know, don't impact groups of people or whatever else. I don't know. So it's just interesting to think about. I thought this was a thought-provoking presentation.
Yeah, definitely. I think I agree that it's like, it's hard for an algorithm, I think, to be totally unbiased. And I think what got me interested in giving this talk is I like John Oliver for some entertainment purposes every once in a while. And he had a segment and it was talking about like this instance of issues on jury selection and how there's underrepresentation in some communities. And when it was investigated, it was found that the reason was because the algorithm used for jury selection, or for like, not for the jury selection, for getting the pool for people to select the jury from, had an alphabetical instance in it. So it went through these counties alphabetically, and at the lower end was where most of like 70% of like the Black community in the area lived. And so they're not being represented on juries. And that's an interesting example because that's like it's an oversight that wasn't intentional, but had a huge cascading effect. So I think it's gonna be hard to ever escape there being bias in our algorithms.
Yeah. Well, and I actually had it in my head that we were ending it too, and we do have a few more hands that just popped up. So feel free to keep them up. I don't need to get you all off of this call right now. So I'll keep those hands up, and let's go ahead. Sean, yours is the first one that I see right now.
Yeah, I was curious how you you asked, should the algorithms be made public or should they be private? Why shouldn't they be made public? It's pretty obvious in my mind that they should be, so they could be held to scrutiny. But is that like a security risk, or is there any downside to that?
I think there can be. I think the first example that comes to mind is like, let's say we have an algorithm that's used for school acceptance, for like getting into college, right? Well, if that algorithm's public, well, now you're introducing bias in a different fashion. So people who have more resources and better access to like reading the algorithm, understanding what it's doing, now have a better ability to game it, so to say, to better fit their profile, to match this algorithm. And so I think it's a trade-off. It's like there's definitely advantages and disadvantages to it. I'm sure there's plenty of other examples, but that's just like the one that pops in my head.
Great. And Kate, go ahead.
Okay, to second what Taylor just said, Google's algorithm, probably one of the most well-known algorithms, as Jeff said the other day, the voodoo of SEO. If Google were to present, like, people could actually understand the whole thing, which, by the way, has been modified by many engineers over lots of years, businesses that had the money to make sure that they could get to the top would. That is inherently why most people hate SEOs, is because we spend all of our time figuring all that shit out. Anyway, if it's available to everybody, then sometimes that has a way of influencing. I've seen this firsthand. Anyway, on to the other thing. Can algorithms be unbiased? Because they are inherently based on humans? No, but a fictional series by Isaac Asimov, called the Foundation series. Its whole core is an algorithm that predicts what's going to happen with the human race, like how things are going to work. And it is modified over thousands upon thousands upon thousands of years. And it's modified by every generation based on what they've seen, what they've experienced. And so it gets better and better and better. I think algorithms can. It's just, how long do they live and how often are they updated to have different points of view? The whole developer empathy thing is that if you are surrounded by people who are not like you, you will have more of a basis of what you might be biased toward. If we have more people working on the same algorithms, I think there can be. or approaching as close as possible. But until you have lots of people working on it, no, I don't think there can be.
That's a really good point. Thanks for sharing that.
Great. And then last one we have right now is Madeline. Go ahead.
I think something that is helping getting these algorithms to be less biased is unsupervised AI. Like there's supervised AI where there are people behind it that are writing the code to tell it what to do. And there's unsupervised AI where the program itself is going and making connections for you instead of like the individuals behind it making those connections. And so I think like as unsupervised AI becomes more prevalent in today's tech world, I think we will see those biases kind of get mitigated as long as you have a big enough sample pool to run those algorithms on.
Yeah, great point. Awesome. We'll go ahead and wrap this up here. Thank you, Taylor. And thank you to all of our Mod 4 presenters. Y'all are done. So one last thing off of your plate for going into your final week at Turing. So nice job, y'all. And yeah, it looks like y'all are getting some thanks through the chats as well. So feel free to take a look through there. All right, y'all. You have Code Fair at 2:15, and the information for that will be shared out in announcements, I believe. So we'll see you all there. Thank you. See ya.